The demolition of this viaduct over the St Leven's Valley of Plymouth in 1986 signalled the end of any hope of ever reopening the old Southern Region rail link from Devonport Junction to St Budeaux, which officially closed to passenger traffic on the 7th of September 1964. Since the latter part of the 19th century, the London and South Western Railway Company, later known as the Southern Region, had linked Plymouth with London Waterloo, crossing part of the Dartmoor National Park on the way. To many people, rail travel to Devon and Cornwall was usually linked to the trains of the Great Western. Yet in truth, the Southern Region had their large network of lines reaching into Cornwall. It served the major towns of East and North Devon, along with the smaller towns of Devonport and Plymouth on the South Devon coast. As far back as 1860, the LSWR had reached Exeter via its main line from Waterloo, Salisbury and Yeovil, then to push onward via the Exeter to Barnstaple Railway and a new double-track route through mid-Devon to the town of Oakhampton. Then onwards, south, past the bleak countryside of the western outskirts of Dartmoor, to meet up with the Great Western, Tavistock and Lancing branch line at Lidford Junction. From there, the LSWR shared a mixed gauge line into Plymouth and on to their grand new terminus at Devonport, King's Road. In 1890, a new double-track route from Lidford linked the main line with the Devonport terminus via Tavistock, Bere Alston and the Tamer Valley. It was in 1891 that Devonport King's Road became a through station with the opening of Plymouth Friary on the 1st of July of that year. The Great Western Railway also reached into the heart of Dartmoor. From Plymouth Station, the train headed towards Yelverton through the Plym Valley, and from there through Tavistock South to Launceston on the fringes of the Great National Park. From Yelverton there was also a branch line, but after circumnavigating some very hard tours on Dartmoor, finally terminated at Princetown, where the station was considered to be one of the highest in England. This line closed in 1956. Followed by the closure of the Lancing branch in 1962, leaving the Southern Region as the only rail link across Dartmoor. But it is at Friary Station in the heart of Plymouth that our journey begins. Today a viaduct and a length of overgrown track is all that remains of the old one-time busy Plymouth terminus. From here, trains ran regularly from 1892 to 1951 to the Plymouth suburbs of Plymstock and Turnchapel. A locomotive depot and later a busy large goods yard enabled BR to use the station as the main parcels depot for the city until the mid-1980s, when the site was sold for commercial redevelopment. North Road Station, seen here in the 1940s, was a GWR mainline stop, but today is the terminus for the remaining line from Gunnis Lake through the Tamer Valley. Devonport King's Road, opened on the 18th of May 1876, became the headquarters of the Plymouth, Devonport and South Western Junction Railway from 1890 to 1922, finally to close in September of 1964. The first steam-hauled train to arrive at King's Road in 1876 was greeted with bands playing, crowds cheering and great rejoicing from the population of the three towns, Devonport, Stonehouse and Plymouth. 88 years later, at its closure, an almost empty DMU on its way to Exeter via Oakhampton was greeted by a single railwayman on duty at what was by then an empty, deteriorating shell of one of the most imposing stations in the Plymouth area. Today, the Plymouth College of Further Education dominates the site, although welcome traces of the days of steam still remain in the surrounding area. Until 1947, the next scheduled stop was Albert Road Halt, but with the closing of this small station, the train, after crossing the St Leven's Viaduct, entered Ford Station, a major stop for Devonport dockyard workers. From Ford, the train passed over a series of high viaducts and bridges on its way to St Budeaux, passing Camel's Head Halt on the way. Closed in 1942, the old station site remained almost untouched, and even the sign was prominent until the closure of the line. At St Budeaux Junction, the line met with the GWR on its way to Saltash in Cornwall, with a station at St Budeaux Ferry Road, whilst the Southern Region trains halted at the adjacent LSWR built station at St Budeaux Victoria Road, built in 1890. British Railways had planned to build a new joint station here in the 1950s, which could have served both lines, but the rundown of the railway system in the Plymouth area prevented such a move. Today, the trains from Gunner's Lake make their final stop here before joining the old GWR line to Plymouth at the junction just a half a mile up the track. It was from this very station that as a 12-year-old I caught the train daily to school near King's Road, and the memory of the West Country class engines roaring into the busy Victoria Road down platform is still quite vivid in my mind. With the GWR crossing at the Royal Albert Bridge, the Southern Region line passes underneath on its way to the journey through the beautiful Tamer Valley. Today this line is still a major attraction for tourists and provides a much needed link to Gunner's Lake. To reach Tamerton Foliet, the train now passes over a small bridge at Tamerton Lake adjacent to Ernesettle. Opened in 1898, Tamerton Foliet Station was built on a headland with the River Tavy to the north and Tamerton Lake to the south. It was some 2 miles from the village and surrounded by beautiful woodland, but was very little used after the war years, resulting in closure in 1962. Leaving Tamerton and Worley Woods, the train now passes over the Southern Line's 16-arch Tavy Bridge, spanning the River Tavy, where it meets the River Tamer. One of the prettiest and best kept stations on the line was Bere Ferrers, and even today the station retains its Southern Region character, serving the Tamer Valley line, with its old station buildings having been converted to a private dwelling house by Chris Grove. Together with a colleague, Bill Bailey, and having been smitten by the preservation bug, they have laboured since 1979 to recreate the heady atmosphere of the bygone country railway station with the added benefits of a regular BR service to the door. In 1991, Chris and Bill acquired the XRNAD Ernesettle 040 DM Hunslet shunter, built in 1944 from the Bodmin and Wentford Railway. After a complete repaint and mechanical and electrical overhaul, this engine is now operational on the privately extended line, where it is only a few miles from its original home. For the future, plans to expand the site into a railway museum are now underway, with the emphasis on offering hands-on experience through schools and other youth organisations to the younger generation, giving them an opportunity to handle the machinery of an age now past. The main booking office, it was as if time had changed nothing. Obtaining the ticket in this way reminded me again of my school days and the journey from St Budeaux to King's Road. Not only has the station retained much of its former Southern Region character, but Chris Grove also obtained the former LSWR SR signal box from Pinhoe in Exeter on the former Salisbury to Waterloo main line. It represents a typical country station box, and whilst originally built in the 1860s, is similar to the original Bere Ferrers box, having the same number of levers. The atmosphere on the day we filmed was unforgettable, with the added bonus of a BR unit approaching the station to stop at the request of a passenger. In discussion with a colleague a few weeks ago, we contemplated the thought of steam again being used on this section of line. Perhaps with the proposed reprivatisation of the railways, some steam enthusiastic entrepreneurs will allow their hearts to rule their heads for a while and provide a new tourist attraction for such a beautiful section of line through the Tamar Valley. Opened on the 2nd of June 1890, the next station, Bere Alston, served as a junction station for the Callington branch from 1908 to 1968, when the station became an exclusive part of the Gunnislake and Tamar Valley line still in operation today, with the closing of the line to Oakhampton. Bere Alston was once a favourite place to travel for a picnic and became well known as a dispatch point for strawberries from the area, with well in excess of some 200 tonnes in some seasons. The station is still busy at peak times and used by commuters from the local village some 3/4 of a mile to the south. Only the former down line platform is left in use, with a single line junction for Gunnislake. To change the points for the journey to Gunnislake, the guard on the train uses a key attached to a single line branch staff to operate the points on the changeover. On its way to Gunnislake, the train passes over the Tavistock Viaduct with breathtaking views of the Tamar Valley, and whilst its ultimate destination used to be Callington, the terminus was eventually moved to Gunnislake. The old station site today has been moved across the road to a new platform and parkway. Back at Bere Alston, there are now tentative plans to reopen the former Southern Region line through to Tavistock, but the station will not be situated at the former Tavistock North site, built high above the western side of the delightful Devon market town which it served. Tavistock North station was 3/4 of a mile away from Tavistock South, served by the GWR, and closed for passenger traffic in 1962. Whilst nothing remains to invoke memories of the busy GWR station, the north site is still rich with memories of days gone by. In its 70-odd years of service, Tavistock had seen many fine locomotives working along its main line through the town, from the small 04402 tanks to the mighty streamlined West Country Pacifics, not forgetting, of course, the more modern 460 classes of the 1950s, and from time to time GWR locomotives including halls and castles. But as the last days of the line approached, diesel passenger units were familiar sights on the lines high above the town centre. Some commentators felt that the closure of the line to Tavistock was ill-conceived, as trains continued to run to Bere Alston only 7 miles away. Although the station and line were run down by BR, it was felt that a little more thought and planning would have resulted in the continuation of a much-needed link to Plymouth. This is indeed borne out today by the need to reopen the line into Tavistock. Maybe much traffic congestion could have been avoided in the Plymouth area had the line remained open. A year or so after its closure, faithful but forlorn steam enthusiasts still visit the site, which was by now deteriorating fast. Eventually, the West Devon Council offices were constructed on the site of the former station goods yard and private houses on the station building. The downside of the station platform, however, still remains as a private dwelling with the apt name of Beeching's Folly. ancient church of St Michael's of the Rock, perched 1170 feet above sea level, is conspicuous in most areas of Dartmoor, and just a little way from this tour is the village of North Brentor, where the LSWR opened a station in June of 1890. Built of Dartmoor granite, this beautiful country station for so many years hosted the great steam engines of the LSWR. Today the station is maintained as a very attractive private dwelling with its distinctive features still in evidence. The station is still sadly missed, since it was always well used by the locals, who are now almost entirely cut off due to the lack of public transport. Whilst the GWR ran almost parallel to the Southern Region line in this area, they adopted the small village of Mary Tavy as stopping point for their service, just a mile to the south. At Lidford Station, opened on the 12th of October 1874, the two rival services of the LSWR and GWR met, although on different platforms. It was here that certain rivalry between the companies was reported at the turn of the century, when drivers and guards would try to sabotage each other's engines by dousing the boiler fires with buckets of water. Until 1890, all LSWR trains crossed over onto the GWR branch line en route to Plymouth. But in that year, the LSWR took their own route down towards Tavistock North and the Tamer Valley. Whilst the GWR line to Tavistock South closed to passengers in 1962, the southern line remained open until 1968, serving the village of Lidford with its famous castle and church and beautiful gorge. Today hardly any trace of the lines and stations remain, and to remind us that at times up to 30 mainline passenger trains and 10 branch line trains passed each weekday, high up on the western moor at Lidford. Bridestowe was the last public station before Oakhampton, named after the village some 2 miles to the northwest of it. Built in October of 1874 on the western edge of Dartmoor, the station also hosted a peat railway extending from its sidings some 6 miles to the high moor and known as the Rattlebrook Peat Railway until 1932. Before the closure of the line, the station had been allowed to deteriorate considerably under BR, but today there is the delightful sight of a private dwelling with many of the structures retaining and restored to their former character. Even the footbridge has remained. The last part of the journey to Oakhampton ran along the wildest edge of Dartmoor, passing the village of Sowerton, after which Meldon Junction was reached. Here until 1968 was a small halt built near to the railway-owned stone quarry, complete with its complement of steam units. The quarry is still in use today, with a connection through Oakhampton to Exeter via Colford Junction. The stone produced there still used as ballast for the railway tracks in the south and west of England. Its distinctive 30-chain-long Meldon viaduct spanned the West Oakhampton Valley, and the halt was used mainly for quarry workers, the trains stopping on request. Built in 1871, the station of Oakhampton served the town for many years until passenger services ended in early June of 1972. It became a very important junction station on the LSWR-SR route from Exeter, and for the last 4 years of its life was the terminus for the passenger line from Exeter, frequented by regular DMU sets. Because Oakhampton is still accessible by train, many are crying out for the passenger service to be reopened. In his book By Train to Oakhampton, local author Colin Bastin said in 1965 about the imminent line closure, "A storm was about to break, wiping away all within its path and leaving within a few short years only broken glass, decay, and the memory of a fine main line closed in what one could say was a moment of madness, and which is now missed so much by so many, including BR. particularly when the seawall at Dawlish on the ex-GWR mainline route is closed to trains, thus cutting off Devon and Cornwall from the rest of the UK railway systems, sometimes for many days, even weeks. And what I find so ironic is that Tavistock is now crying out for the route to be rebuilt and reopened, yet no one seems to be able to find the money to put right the mistakes of the past. After 23 years, sufficient funds may have been raised to finance the construction of the line back into Tavistock as mentioned earlier. And as for the route to Oakhampton, only the future will hold the key to that. One thing is certain, however, that the need for alternative transport to the British road system is becoming a more urgent priority as the days go by. Perhaps someone in authority will listen and act on the basis of need rather than profitability and budget control. Stamford Courtenay, opened on the 8th of January 1867, was for many years the terminus for the line from Exeter because of a lack of money to extend further westwards. The next two stations on the old Southernway were very similar in design and structure. North Taunton, with its distinctive and imposing Victorian station building, was opened in 1865 and served the large area of mid-Devon farmland country and the village after which it was named. Built around the same time was Bow, known to be the busiest station on the route from Exeter and served by the DMU sets until its closure in June of 1972. Its distinctive character mimicked North Taunton with an impressive Victorian station building. Well used by people over the years, the station building had distinctive chimneys, a reminder of how powerful the railways were in the Victorian era, for who but the Victorians would have built such a large station in a rural area? At Coleford Junction, the train joined the Exeter to Barnstaple line, and just 1 mile south of Coleford was the busy station of Yelverton, with its high signal box on its north side and a large marshalling yard to its south for the use of the many North Devon freight trains. In the steam days, Yelverton was popular with enthusiasts. In the images you are watching, taken by Norman Taylor with his standard 8mm cine camera in the late 1950s, is a living testimony to the memorable steam activity at this station. Back at Coleford Junction, the line branched to Barnstaple. It was all part of the southern region. The line is still in operation today with regular trains from Exeter. From Coleford, the line approached its summit at Cobblestone, some 350 feet above sea level, then begins its 25-mile descent to Barnstaple running alongside the River Yeo in the vicinity of Lapford until it reaches the River Tor. It then follows the Tor for the remainder of the journey, crossing several substantial bridges. This memorable footage was taken by Victor Thompson in the early 1970s, at a time when the line from Exeter to Barnstaple was under threat of closure. But common sense prevailed, and today it is still possible to travel the line. The film, Back Along the North Devon Lines, released by Aarchive Film Productions, explores the history of the Exeter to Barnstaple Railway and features some superb and unique archive footage of the line from Barnstaple to Ilfracombe, now consigned to the history books. It was at this time that the Exeter to Barnstaple line was consigned to branch status, and the nickname of Tarka Line took hold in 1989. In 1945, locomotives of the new West Country class were first seen on this railway. It's hard to visualise these mighty workhorses thundering down the valley from Exeter when the link was a main line. Today, a note on the Regional Railway's pocket timetable warns, "After a period of heavy rainfall, flooding on local rivers may cause the temporary suspension of all parts of the Exeter to Barnstable rail service. If this occurs, a replacement road service will be introduced." Ah well, that's progress, I suppose. Back at Yelverton, once a busy bustling station, it has today been relegated to an unstaffed halt on the route with the former up platform only in use. With the sparse activity now seen here, it's hard to visualise the intense steam activity of the earlier years without historical cine footage such as we saw earlier. Crediton station boasts of a turbulent history dating back to the mid-19th century. Following the passing of the Exeter and Crediton Railway Act on the 21st of July 1845, Messrs Waring set to work on the building contract. In 1847, the double-track broad gauge line was finished, but was prevented from being opened by the LSWR, which craftily purchased the majority of shares and outvoted the Exeter and Crediton directors. The line was left derelict until early spring of 1851, when one track was reconverted to broad gauge and leased to the B&ER. The other road was left as a standard gauge. Captain Wynne carried out the Board of Trade inspection on the 8th of May 1851, and the Exeter and Crediton was ceremonially opened on the 12th, on which day the station was decorated with flowers, trees and triumphal arches. Today, like Yelverton, Crediton is an unstaffed halt on the Exeter to Barnstable line. Newton St Sires is a little used request station on the route today, although in years gone by it served the village of the same name and had done so since 1851. The station here served the smallest village on the entire line, and in the day of steam, trains often roared through this station at over 55 miles per hour. Like Plymouth North Road, Exeter St David's was not originally part of the Southern Region setup, having been built by the GWR. However, in the last days of the Southernway, it was the starting point for the trains to Oakhampton and further. It also became a stopping point for the expresses from Waterloo, and so figures in the memories of the line. Known as Exeter Queen Street until July of 1933, this station, Exeter Central, built to serve the southern region, was in the centre of the city of Exeter and just a stone's throw away from the main shopping centre. It was always very busy and held the distinction of having the longest platforms of any station in Devon. The very steep bank between Exeter Central and Exeter St David's required the use of banking engines on most up trains in steam days. These engines could often be seen resting between duties in the middle lines of the station. From here, the route moved on towards Chard, Somerset and finally London, Waterloo. On the 5th of June 1972, the section of line from Colford Junction to Oakhampton was finally closed to passenger trains. On this day, the last of the trains set out from Exeter to make final stops at Bow, North Taunton, Stamford Courtenay and Oakhampton. Feelings were running high, and the staff and enthusiasts at Exeter St David's, having attached a wreath to the front of the leading diesel car, sent it on its way for the final journey. How good it is that rail enthusiasts thought to capture so many vital images of days gone by on cine film. Without them, much of our heritage would simply be words on pages of vital yet obscure books gathering dust on library shelves. Movie images bring alive those important events and enable us to relive moments in time that would otherwise be forgotten. So join those passengers now on that sad day in 1972 and embark on a memorable journey into history on the Southernway. Incidentally, as a final thought, did you know that in 1928 12,807 passenger tickets were issued at Yelverton Station and 240 lavatory pennies collected from the station toilets?
Please visit our website for news about new productions that are on the way, and you can support my work on my Patreon page. Thank you.